You're listening to Parts and Charts. I'm Chelsea Owens, a therapist certified in internal family systems, and my co-host, KP Kajabowski, is an astrologer. We're testing the theory that IFS and astrology are mapping the same inner territory. Every episode, we put that to the test. Glad you're here.
So it's episode 2, season 2, and we thought it would be great to bend Chelsea's ear. Well, not bend Chelsea's ear. Cry on her shoulder. No, pick her brain about the philosophical foundations for IFS. As an astrologer who's really working with my parts now, as like planets as parts, I just want to make sure that I'm fully understanding what we're doing here. And we talked about that in season 1 a lot, but I'm curious, Chelsea, what are the philosophical underpinnings or foundations that we need to understand in order to know why IFS parts works?
Yeah. And when you,
Therapist background.
yeah. I remember when you were laying out the episodes for this season, the first theme you had for this episode was something about like the neuroscience, right? It was like the neuroscience behind IFS. And then I think it was something about, I don't know, like why
Yeah.
the brain does this, right? Is that what you said? We're trying to figure out like something like why like how to explain how the brain does this. And I was like sitting with that for a second because I was like I don't really know if I can speak about neuroscience. I could pull up some grad school textbooks, but I was like, okay, how how does neuroscience play into IFS? And I was trying to make the connection, and then something just didn't click, like with like, why does the brain do this? And because I was like, I don't think we can, maybe that's the wrong question. Like, I don't think this is about, understanding how the brain does this, like creates parts, because I don't really think the brain is creating parts. And I don't think it's all the brain. There's definitely that, because we have brains, we have a mind, and we could have a whole episode about the mind and what the mind actually is metaphysically, but maybe we'll touch on that a little bit when we go forward today. But parts are more than just something the mind is creating, I think, period. So parts are, Dick says it in one of his books, they're sacred beings. And so when I'm explaining that to clients, or when I'm explaining that here, maybe people could have different reactions to that, feeling different responses to sacred beings being inside of us. It sounds a little esoteric, but I really do believe that whatever they are, whatever it is that parts are made up of, really it's just particles and waves and thoughts and feelings and emotions and experiences and a little self energy. That it's like hard to really know where are they really coming from. Like, they are coming from somewhere. I don't want to explain it in a way that feels like, okay, they're these like floating entities that like come into our bodies and it's not a part of us. Like, that's a whole nother topic. But it's not just something that the mind is creating or making up. I guess they have more, I don't know, like more substance than that. They're parts of us that, can carry burdens, like we talked about quite a bit, that maybe have started out with us since birth as, free and expressive and beautiful beings. Kind of, how whenever when you're born, you're kind of born with this kind of untouched, like, purity, right? And then life starts to happen and get layers on top of you, and you could have traumatic experiences that inform or develop some of those burdens that you start to carry, or some of that the parts start to carry. And in IFS, we're just trying to understand that and unburden any parts that are carrying burdens. And then there could also be parts that aren't really carrying burdens, that are just doing a role for you, but it's not extreme.
Yeah, the first thing that's coming to mind is, you kind of answered it, but like, do you feel like our parts are born with us, as like all of our genetic code is born with us? Or like you said, like there are moments where parts
Mm.
are burdened, but there's not a new part being made. It's that there is a part that's experiencing stress or trauma or something, and they're reacting in a different way now because of that experience, right? Is that how you're feeling about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't and this is something that you can ask your parts or that you may ask, like, when you're with the therapist practicing it, but because not I don't think all parts are necessarily born with you. Some could be because, you know, we do need parts to kind of carry out different parts of our life, like different roles, like admin work and talking to people. So like those are probably all parts, right? So you are kind of
Yeah.
developing, they are developing probably from young ages, right? But they can come in like parts can develop or start to exist at any point during your lifespan and for different reasons, different things happen and different parts like organize around whatever is going on for you in order to help you out, right? I do believe that all parts are
Yeah.
trying to help you out for some reason in some way. And we can I don't know if we got into this last season or I don't think we did, but there's this idea of like cultural and legacy burdens. So parts that maybe carry a little bit of your own burden, a little bit of someone else's burden, or the culture's burden. So those parts could be a little bit yours and a little bit not yours, something that you could have inherited. And sometimes, like when we ask questions to distinguish, like, is this all your part, or is it, coming from outside of you, or is this all your burden or not? Or what percentage of it
Mhm.
is coming from somewhere else? Yeah, there's questions that you can ask to try to get more information about that, and parts will always tell you. I was just thinking, before we started recording, what we were talking about with how society, only celebrates certain things and all of that kind of stuff. And the kind of shame about being delayed on certain like life markers. And I'm sure if I excavated a little bit, I would find some kind of cultural burden there or some kind of legacy burden too, even maybe it's with my family. But I'm thinking definitely cultural, like with all the things that this part of me is probably taken in from society, right? About what's important in culture, what's not, or
Yeah.
what's valuable and what's not. So I'm sure if I did a little work and went inside, I could probably trace that back. And I would probably ask, how much of this is mine, or like when did you first start coming in to do this job for me, or how far back do you go? Like, what's your first memory? I may find it may say, like, I've been here before your birth. So it's not even that I came in when you were born. Like, I go back beyond that, yeah. So that's my
Yeah.
guess with that. Because it just feels so like, as we were talking about what we were talking about, like, all my other parts, like, are like, I want this and that and blah, blah, blah. Like, they had such opposite ideas and almost felt like this other part of me was like kind of foolish for even saying what it's saying. And it, doesn't totally feel like me, but it still feels pretty strong. But the strength of that feels like it's mostly informed by messages or cultural beliefs. So that's giving me
Yeah.
some trailheads. I'll work on that later. But yeah, going back to, I guess, the philosophical foundations of understanding, yeah, just understanding more about IFS. And we were going to briefly talk about this idea of like being
Yeah.
inherently good or bad, right? And that as we're saying, okay, are you born with all your parts? Yeah, like kind of, but not necessarily. In IFS, we have this belief that all parts are welcome, that there's no bad parts, right? No bad parts. And people could argue like, oh, well, what about this or that? Like, what about people who do really like terrible things, right? What about that? Um, and yet, like I think Dick would maintain the same belief. Like, there are no bad parts,
Mhm.
but parts can do heinous shit. Parts can do or have a really destructive behavior or do really terrible things. And even in his work, he's seen like amazing changes and rehabilitation of parts who have done really terrible things, and they've like unburdened and gotten a lot of freedom from the extreme roles they were put in. So it's like when you like actually get down to like what is going on with parts and why they're doing what they're doing, even if it's some really terrible stuff, you'll probably find a good intention or what they had to do to
Yeah.
survive in this terrible world, right? So basically, IFS is going to change the world. We're
Yeah.
just spreading the word, and it's but and then also with yeah with inherently good, bad, like our Western society is set up or has been set up very intentionally to with this belief that people are inherently bad, right? Even the field of psychology. So it is kind of a new paradigm, as Dick says. It's a different way of thinking. It's a huge mindset shift for a lot of people to get behind, even like Christians, right? Like he says in one of his books, like he was working with some ministry in the
Yeah.
South, right? Did you read that part where he was talking with, I think it was evangelicals, and about this idea of like, are people inherently good or bad? Because like, um, it's like, yes, but like the Christian mind would say like, but what about sin or like original sin? And he was saying like that, well, that's kind of like burdens, right? We are kind of born like pure beings and then stuff happens, life happens, we're human, and burdens uh, can really weigh you down.
Yeah. I was really excited that like it's really early on in his book that he talks about working with people who've murdered. And just reading this book like called No Bad Parts, that's what I'm talking about. Chelsea's been my like unofficial book guide for that as I've been reading through it. And he talks about a few things like the Calvinist view that all of us are like burdened by sin and like there's no way out. We just like we have to pray, 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 do our best not to hurt anyone kind of thing. And then, like,
Mhm.
working with people who have
Mhm.
murdered, he he talks about how, like, working with their parts and getting to know why certain parts, like, needed whatever for whatever reason to cause harm to another human being, they gain more understanding of what was happening, and, like, that person is in jail forever, so there's no way that they can prove that they won't harm someone again, but in that setting, Dick could see, like, they were opening up space inside of them because they were listening to all these parts that were really extreme and they were all fighting each other. It's just really
Yeah,
exciting to me, having grown up
yeah,
also in a pretty Christian social way, um, to see that, like, no, we're not inherently bad. We're actually inherently good. It's just there's these things
yeah,
that have happened that have
yeah,
harmed us or burdened parts of us so that we're acting in this way, like we have to fight back or we have to X, Y. I'm really
yeah, right? And if we are truly made in the likeness of God, whatever you think God is, source, like, then we are God. Like, we are that energy, right? And, like, so it feels so bizarre that, yeah, that then there would this be this belief, especially in, I don't know, I guess in Christianity, like,
yeah,
that we're not that, right? That we're somehow also bad, but we're also made in the image of God, but we're also these
yeah.
terrible sinners who need to repent, it
This is also like
doesn't make sense to
while
me.
you're talking this whole
Yeah.
time, I'm like thinking of examples of when I've been an educator, seeing young people. I taught middle school briefly. I think I bring that up every episode because it was the hardest 3 months of my life, I swear. And I teach younger adults
Hmm.
in the college setting. Anyway, I'm just thinking about these moments where if a student was spoken to in a compassionate way and they were asked instead of assumed that they were asked why they threw a table on the floor or whatever the bad behavior was, I'm saying that in air quotes, then they could say why, they could
Yeah.
share why they were frustrated, they could share why whatever their experience was. But instead, we live in a like, at least
Yeah.
a lot of the educational systems are punitive first, or like they see a bad behavior and they need to stop it instead of leaning in. And that's not true. That's not true for most
Yes.
educators I know, is that like they are also educators now are taught to do as much as you can to listen compassionately. And viewing parts of me as students
Yeah.
has been helpful because I want to be that educator that's like, well, you didn't turn in your any of your work for the past 3 weeks. what's happening? What's happening? What's happening, buddy? You know, instead of saying like, okay, we'll fail them. Like they should be doing better, or like whatever the stance could be. It's helping me
Mhm.
see also like philosophically how all people want to be treated. Because all of us do shitty things, and like most of the time, I don't
Yeah.
even know why I'm doing this shitty thing until I go in and be like, "Well, I was underfed," or "Oh, you reminded of my aunt who like said something shitty to
Mhm.
me when I was 4," or whatever.
Mhm.
Not an excuse, but
Mhm.
partially an
Yeah.
explanation. So that's what's like rolling in my head while
Yeah.
you're talking, and it's
Yeah.
exciting to me to like make those connections.
Yeah.
Another part, mercy, yeah, we
Having
talked about mercy
mercy, right?
recently. Mercy, yeah, I looked up the definition is like when you're granted grace when you could have been granted
Yeah.
punishment. Yeah. So
Yes.
punishment is
Yeah.
inherently a
Mhm.
part of
Yeah.
mercy
Mhm.
in that it isn't given to you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's just beautiful. I sent you that Dharma talk from a couple weeks ago, but, my Dharma teacher had this really beautiful anecdote, but and I'll summarize it, but I think he was leading some kind of group or teaching something, maybe it was meditation or something like I think it was some kind of juvenile hall. So, the kids were youths and they were there for some reason, maybe they were destructive in some way. Um, and there was this one kid who showed up like every single day, every single class, and was just such a nuisance. Like was throwing stuff, yelling, talking the whole like just all over the place. And I think it took a while, but finally he pulled him aside and he was like, what's going on with you? And the kid was just like, I think he didn't really say anything, and the teacher was like, why do you keep coming back if it seems like you hate being here so much? And the kid was like, I just wanted to see how
Wow.
long it would take for you to kick me out. And he just, just like so badly like wanted to be accepted, right? And be there and could not, figure out how to do that. And the only way to do that is to kind of be,
Yeah.
troublesome or loud or whatever, make some problems and get his needs met that way. And, it didn't get kicked out. And the teacher showed him mercy in that moment. And he was like, you know, I get
Yeah.
it. And it came to it with, yeah, this merciful attitude. And I think that that feels so true for parts as well. When they're kicking and screaming and doing something that can seem really destructive, or harmful even to the self, like once you actually come to them with understanding and inquiry and curiosity and a little mercy or compassion, like instead of being like, what the
Yeah.
fuck are you doing? Like, stop doing that or get out of here. You can't do this anymore. Get out of here. That's what they're expecting to hear, right? They're expecting to hear someone who's going to get mad at them or punish them or not understand them. But when you come to them with a different energy, and they're like, "Oh, okay, now I can relax because you're actually understanding me. You're not
Yeah.
getting mad at me."
This
Like,
is
that
like
feels really nice. Yeah.
such a segue, but I feel like it's energetically related. What's also coming up while you're talking is I had this friend who there was just one comment that really hurt me, and it was like years ago, and I'm still feeling it. And I forgot the exact words, but it was something like, "Oh, you're so loud, you're so sunny, like you're so happy to be yourself." But the way their tone of voice was very much like, that's not acceptable, or that's annoying. Yeah.
That's not
And the
okay.
more and it's been coming up a lot lately, the more I'm doing parts work, especially with my Venus, and
Mhm.
I'm seeing more clearly now that there was this part of them, my friend, who I love still very much, who was so angry or so whatever the word is about their vibrance or their loudness or something, that they didn't allow them to be vibrant or loud publicly. And there was shame or whatever around that. And then so when someone in their life was that in whatever way, it was they criticized it out loud. And I know that friend of mine would never do that intentionally, or at least maybe the tone wouldn't be intentional.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
this is it's helping me understand other
Mhm.
interactions with people I've had with their parts and my parts,
Yeah.
And I feel like since being a very young person,
Mhm.
I've also had a really difficult time with letting myself be vibrant or, like, exuberant or whatever, and then when I do, like, just have to do it because it's
Yeah.
like, that's self energy to me, at least it feels like that. I have to express that, and I don't wanna use the energy as much anymore to, like, squash it down. Like, I feel proud when I let it come out, and
Yeah.
so when someone calls attention to me in a place where I feel
Yeah.
proud because it took a lot of energy for me to get there. Anyway, this is coming up as, like, I'm having so much more
Yeah.
compassion
Mhm.
for a moment that really hurt me that's still, like, bothering me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that we're all just, like, trying not to be certain ways, or we're trying to keep other parts from expressing themselves because we have this, like, one part has a belief or a pattern or whatever. It's not
Mm.
that, like, that person's a shitty friend. It's that, no, they have a pretty loud part,
Mhm.
and it's better not to
Mhm.
make these grand
Yeah.
assumptions about people or, like, decisions about people or parts, and instead, like, wonder why something occurred.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Totally. Mhm. Right. I think it's really it feels like freedom in some ways when you can recognize that other people have parts, and that's probably what
Yeah.
you're interacting with, and not to, like, excuse, everything that people do or say or what those parts
Yeah.
do, but it gives you a little bit more maybe it gives you a little bit more of an opening to have maybe a little compassion
I
and
think too, like,
understanding. Yeah.
confrontation in these kind of situations when you understand that everyone has parts is so much more fruitful or just feels better because you're not making an assumption about the person's character or goodness.
Mhm.
I'm saying in air quotes again, like, I'm not making an assumption about
Yeah.
goodness anymore. I'm
Yeah.
asking, like, why did that part of you express against my part of me or whatever? Um, and, like, it's a lot more language.
Yes, and I also, like, wouldn't want people I also wouldn't want people to, like, use that, like, in a
Yeah,
manipulative way either, like, to be able to weaponize, like,
for real.
psychology language with your partner, let's say, "Is that a
Yeah.
part of you that's doing that to me right now?" Like, there's a way
Oh
that
my
that could
god,
also
yeah,
feel a little icky. Like, you don't wanna name someone else's parts, like, "Babe, is that a part of you
yeah,
that didn't wanna do the dishes?"
it's all yeah,
But you can ask, like, you can inquire about it without directly naming it or invite them to, like, go inward and
right, yeah, you
try,
have to be
but
careful not to yeah, manipulation, but it does help me, like, instead of feel so activated or hurt, you know what I mean? Because of this philosophical
Yeah.
stance that, like,
Yeah.
it's all in my body, it's all inside of me, it's all a part of me.
Mhm.
And also,
Yeah.
it's not I'm not just
Yeah.
one doing one thing, and then I have a character judgment against my one self. It's all these beings working together.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
let's talk about the
yeah.
monomind
And that's talked
model.
about in, like, the early I think the first chapter of No Bad Parts by Dick Schwartz. Yeah. Do you wanna kind of give us the lay
Yeah.
of the land?
Well, maybe, I don't know, do you have anything to say about it?
Yeah.
What can I
What
say?
my experience with monomind philosophy is like from the Buddhist standpoint is that like in meditation, there's moments where you may feel agitated or distracted, and that's the monkey mind thing where like just understand that humans have a monkey mind, and the best we can do is like give us enough space, keep breathing through it, keep focusing back on the breath, and then over time through the practice your monkey mind will quiet, 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 which I don't think there's
Mhm.
inherently, I don't have issue with that because I do see that the more I'm working with my parts, there is like over time, there's more and more space. So it feels similar. But in No
Mhm.
Bad Parts, Dick writes about like, yeah,
Mhm.
that's a helpful skill to build. And also assuming that
Mhm.
things coming up are just like errant thoughts or not to be like
Mhm.
entertained, I guess, and more so that parts are coming up to speak and they want to be listened to, not ignored. So that's like what I got from that chapter, and I'm
Yeah.
not mentioning everything he wrote. Read the book. It's a great book.
Yeah, 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 the monomind feels to me like it's more about, like,
Yeah.
willpower, right? And what you're describing, it's like, oh yeah, we have one mind. Yeah, that it's either good or bad. You're either good or bad, depending on how much willpower you have and how much you can like accomplish or, get your mind to be quiet, which also just feels some of
Yeah.
that feels very Western to me too, setting us up to just be like productive robots and in a capitalist society. I mean, yeah, I even see it like I've seen it in my practice sometimes too, where people come in and they're like, um, kind of confused or they don't understand why they're not happy all the time or they're not something positive all the time. Or some days I feel sad or some days I feel really tired. And it's like it sometimes feels hard for folks to understand that like that's completely normal and okay. That we're not supposed to be like trying to be happy all the time. And if there's anything other than happiness, there's something wrong with you. Like we contain multitudes and that's completely okay. And I think I think so many people are afraid of getting stuck in one of those emotions and not being able to get out of it. And I've seen that with parts for sure. Like there's always a part that feels, part of its worries and concerns is that you're going to get stuck in like despair or sadness forever and never get out of it. So yeah, there's this way that we kind of fear like being one way or that we are one way and that's it forever and there isn't a fluctuation or there aren't parts, but there are. And yeah, and since I've gotten into more Buddhism as well, with certain teachers and certain practices, like there is a way of bypassing or dismissing thoughts that come up. And I get that that is a skill. And I think it's super important for people to, I don't know, just get curious about that. Curious about, no, you don't have to in that moment, right? You don't have to go into like, what is this part doing? What's it saying? All of its history. But just acknowledging that, like, what's coming up are, like, sacred beings within you that are complex, and it's not as simple as, like, need to look at my calendar and put this thing on the calendar right now, like,
Yeah.
that's really important to that part, right? And it's trying to give you a message for a reason, like all the parts are. So, not to be ignored. Yeah, I've seen with a lot of spiritual practices how what John Wellwood coined the term spiritual bypassing can look like, and sometimes a lot of parts can get really on board with some of those spiritual practices because it looks like a really healthy thing to do. It's like parts will be like, yeah, you're going to meditate or you're going to church or you're going to like do this thing that, society says is like a positive thing, which is great. And sometimes that can lead to like parts being pushed down and ignored or not even, not accepted, right? Because of whatever they believe or what they're doing, which can just cause a lot more separation inside the self and then maybe causes some of those really zealous parts to just
Yeah.
ramp it up, like let's go like let's do religion even harder, or like the spiritual practice even harder so that we really make those other parts shut up, which will just cause a lot more
Yeah.
separation or backlash.
I think it's really
um
great to bring up
yeah,
willpower in this moment because willpower is a really celebrated characteristic or skill or choice in our culture. But willpower, in my experience, is often a very negative experience because of what you just said is that you're pushing through, you're doing something even harder and ignoring all other parts of yourself 10 times more. So then there's going to be an
yeah,
abreaction soon, if not later. And I'm
yeah,
thinking about like someone who goes hard on I worked in, television and movies. We would, like, go hard for 10 days or whatever, and then everyone got sick, like, violently ill after the shoot was done, and
yeah,
that's a very physical manifestation, and
yeah,
I see that a lot in my life when I'm, like, just pushing, just using my willpower to get something done. I lose, like, a day or 2 almost like clockwork, because I know I've been ignoring other parts of myself, and it's not that I couldn't have gotten that work done, But if
Yeah.
I had to have done it in a way that was more natural to me instead of just, like, ignoring everything else. So
Yeah.
that's been on my mind a lot since I started reading No
Yeah.
Bad Parts and listening to you,
Mm,
because I think
nice.
that's why we do, like, the regular parts work IFS sessions is because at any given moment, there is a part of you that you aren't listening to enough, and if you listen to it more, other parts of your
Mhm.
life would be easier and feel more joyful. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm thinking about,
definitely.
like you just said, like, the religious people that I've witnessed in my life who, like, will just keep praying, and then, like, they are the people who are the meanest on the planet, you know? They're because 'cause they're ignoring other parts of themselves because they're
Mhm.
just focusing on, like, "Just be a good person, just pray, just show up on Sundays," you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Totally. And I don't wanna make it sound like I'm just, like, bashing religion because I think it offers so many people and, just having a
Yeah.
space for community and spiritual life is helpful. And I can only imagine that, like, people are learning it from somewhere, right? It's like you're hearing messages from something or somewhere, and, like, that is also what kinda amplifies
Yeah.
parts to be more extreme, I think. Or it could be, like, how parts are interpreting something, and maybe they're, kind of ramping it up themselves, but it's like it kind of feels like, there's gotta be
Yeah.
some cultural elements to it as well that parts are hearing from
Yeah.
leaders or,
Makes
whoever,
me think
right?
of, at Christmas,
That
we were
really
watching, like, King of Queens, and then, like, an hour later, it was another one of those, like, 2000 sitcoms, and, like, the way that the men talk to the women, holy shit. Like, that's how we
Yeah,
were all raised to, like, think how culturally people talked to each other. Like, yeah, that is just as harmful as, like,
yeah,
you said, a social burden or a cultural burden,
mm,
than any spiritual community for
yeah.
sure.
Mhm. I mean, yeah, even
Yeah,
even in Frasier, like, my
yeah,
favorite show, they were, like, slut shaming Roz all the time. They would make fun of Roz all the time for, like, how she
yeah,
loved men so
and
much.
how
Like,
there's only one female
even
character
Frasier.
basically, or 2, yeah, and how, like,
Yeah,
that has to have
yeah,
informed us.
yeah. And they would make fun of Daphne's clairvoyance all the time
Mhm.
too, like, that was a running joke, how she, like, thought she was psychic, and they're like, "Yeah, Daphne, sure. Like, you don't rely on science like the rest of us."
I'm very glad Frasier made it in.
But I love Frasier. I know.
We've talked about just how parts feel inside of us. Maybe they came with us at birth, but probably not all of them. We talked about how there's like the assumption that we are just one being, but that's not true. At least if you are like subscribing to this IFS framework, which I am absolutely at this point, we aren't just a mono mind. We are not just one being. We are many influences inside of us. And then what was the other thing? Inherently good and versus inherently bad. I confidently have always felt that we are inherently good. It's just there's
Mhm.
always something that is like turning or twisting inside of us that make us feel like we have to act in a certain way. And I think about when my sister was a younger person, she would bite a lot
Mhm.
because that was like her best way of getting what she needed. And if she had another way to get what
Yeah.
she needed, she would have done something else. But it just showed up like biting, and that sucked. Twin
Aw.
life, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so from there, is there any
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
element, like, if you're, like, bringing on a new client or you're explaining how IFS works, is there any other element that we should know to, like, make it all click in? Or does that feel like a
If I'm bringing in a new client or if a new client's starting with me, well, I don't know. These days, I feel like most clients come to me because they're wanting IFS and they know that's what I do. So, I don't really get a ton of like totally random people who don't know how I practice or don't know anything about IFS, which is
Yeah,
kind of cool at this point. And even, back in the day when I was getting more clients who didn't know about IFS, I would stay away from explaining anything. Maybe I'd say in a consult call, like, "Oh, I practice IFS," and I'd give a 2-minute spiel about it. But I kind of stay away from that because I think it's better for them to just experience it and not have all of their thinking parts being like, "What is this? What do we do? Am I doing it right? Blah, blah," like, trying to figure it out. and I'd rather just have them
Yeah.
experience it and see what that feels like. So, it's better yeah, it's better that way, and that honestly, that's how I came to it as well. Like, I just started with a new therapist, I don't know, 8 years ago, whatever, and she just started doing it, and I had, no idea what it was, and I was like, "What?" And I thought I knew enough about therapy to know, like, what most, like, theory and modalities were, but I guess I didn't. So, I think that really helped me. Like, I don't know how my journey would have been different if I just went to an IFS workshop and somebody
Right.
explained the theory to me without experiencing. I think about this a lot because I'm like, would I have still come to IFS and been like, yes, like that's what I want to practice if I just heard about it from somebody and they were like, we're all parts and blah, 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 blah. I think I would have like understood it on an intellectual level.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have been that interested in it though. It would not have clicked the same way had I
Yeah.
not experienced it in my body in therapy first. I truly believe that. Because I mean, yeah, if I just read No Bad Parts, I'd be like, "Okay, this is kinda cool." I don't know how that really, like, works or how that feels to me. Yeah, I don't know if I would have been as excited about it. So I'm really grateful for that. So I think that's also what I hope to impart on my clients and everyone, is to just,
Yeah.
yeah, be able to experience it yourself so that you can actually get the somatic experience of it. Because I don't feel like it really
Yeah.
clicks until you actually do that, and you feel what it's like to
That's
work
what
within your
Dick
own
said in the
system.
book too, is like, I
It's
can talk to you about this
life-changing.
all day, but like, let's do an
Oh, really?
exercise. So he writes out an exercise. You don't know anything about this until
Yeah.
you experience it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, okay. I think
Mhm.
let's wrap up this
Yeah.
episode. I want to ask you something that's been on my mind that I feel like is related. That, like, when you're inside of your body, I have to close my eyes when I'm doing a session with you and other people. Like, how do you build up that
Yeah.
muscle with the active imagination or the active, like, listening that is required in these sessions? Like, how would you advise people to practice that? If they're not doing an active parts work session, but, like, maybe, like, is there something you can do in your regular life?
Are you asking, like, as a client or as the therapist? How do
Yeah,
I, as a
yeah.
therapist, build up this,
No, I'm just
like,
thinking
when I'm
about,
with
like,
clients?
how my journey of, like, building up my intuition felt, and, like, awkward and clunky at first, but, like, the more I
Mm,
do it, the more I can trust what I'm sensing. Like, how would you encourage
mm.
someone to start?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everyone's gonna be different in how they experience their parts. So, um, I think the more that you're just tuning in and paying attention to what's going on in your body, like, it may not even be imagination, it may not even be, you know, visuals, right? It could be sensation, it could be energetic, it could be like voices. So you're really just tuning in, just tuning your attention. And where it's different from intuition, because I know with intuition, you're kind of tuning into like what your higher self is, channeling, right? Where there could, be other voices going on too, right? That are like, don't do that, don't do that. Or there's a lot more like discernment,
Yeah,
perhaps, right? With intuition. But with parts, like you're just noticing anything and everything. Like I don't think there's any discernment because it's all
yeah,
inside of you. It's all welcome here. So whatever you're noticing, it doesn't have to be a certain way. Just noticing every single thing that's going on. And that's all,
yeah.
yeah, it's all welcome. It's all okay. So tuning in to yourself, yeah, closing your eyes really helps. Yeah.
I'm hearing the word
What else
notice.
helps?
Oh, go ahead.
I think working with, yeah, I mean, I think it helps to work with somebody else, but I get that you're asking like what can you do when you're
Yeah.
by yourself or not
And
working
this
with someone
reminds me
else?
of what the poets talk about, like Allen Ginsberg wrote in that poem, and he taught, "Notice what you're noticing." And, like, that's all you really need to do is, like, you noticed a
Mhm.
bird, and notice that you noticed a
Yeah.
bird. Like, that is the muscle you can build up.
Mhm.
It's making me think of a friend invited me on a
Mhm.
color walk where we chose a color, and we just, like, pointed out whenever that color showed up,
Oh.
like that's noticing what you're noticing. And it may
Nice.
feel like playful and little, but it's not.
Mhm.
That's part of it. So
Mhm.
that's what's coming to mind for me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, like, a lot of what,
Yeah.
meditation teaches as well, right? Just, like, we're not trying to, like, get rid of all of our thoughts, but we're just noticing
Yeah.
what we're noticing.
Lovely. All right, this was great. I
Yeah.
feel like I have a couple essays inside of me that I want to pull together. Yeah.
Oh, do you? Well, anything you wanna say
Yeah.
about astrology
Um,
in this conversation?
I think that okay, so before this call, I had in my mind that the way I talk about all the different parts, LOL, of our chart are like they're all working together to make this kind of like energetic soup that is like so uniquely the characteristics of that sky moment, which like we can talk about as the birth chart. Like you embody this like amalgamation of all of these archetypes together and they work as a team. And I still feel that's true, especially when I'm talking about like, well, how does a Venus and Gemini and a Moon and Leo look like together when they're in conversation? Like it's like painting with colors, and there's that's exciting to me. But what has
Hmm.
been more exciting to me lately is thinking about all of our placements as parts, and they are all each dynamic in themselves, and they're always changing, and they're always in conversation. And but sometimes some parts aren't
Mhm.
talking with other parts, because that's true about astrology as well, is that like currently in the sky maybe Saturn and
Mhm.
Uranus aren't in conversation right now in a technical way, because they don't need to be in conversation right
Uh,
now. They're doing other things. They're talking to other people. So that's what's been on my mind, and
yeah.
thinking about not the chart as the person, but the chart as the place of data to show us where all the parts are and how they're in relation to each other, which is like I
Mm.
think a lot of language just to say I'm checking my worldview against this IFS foundational way of thinking. And it's feeling better.
Mm.
It's feeling more like it's more intuitive for me to do that as an astrologer rather than the more traditional way, which is more of qualifying or quantifying ways of thinking. So it's more relational. It's relational thinking is what I'm doing. I feel like I'm still at the beginning, so I can't
Mhm.
really describe what I'm seeing. That's where I'm at with that.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
there are no bad charts too.
Beautiful.
Like there's there's no bad person.
Mhm.
There's no yeah,
Mhm.
we're all neutral places, and there's dynamism inside of that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
Mhm. Like,
Yes. Okay. Thank you everyone for
yeah.
listening. Send us a message if you want. Thank you for joining us for Parts and Charts, the IFS and Astrology podcast. If something sparked insight or resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you.
No, really, we're here to make friends. Reach out to us. Leave a comment, subscribe, and if you feel called, share this episode with someone you care about. Or, if you want to work with us one-on-one and go deeper with this work, check the link in the show notes for how to find us.
Until next time, may all of you feel a part of the family.